That is amazing. I almost want to do this thing that the kids do.
Yeah.
Just do it with me.
I know what you're talking about.
Hello and welcome to On the Couch with me, Iman Rappetti, proudly sponsored by Nedbank CIB. Today we're talking about a topic that's very close to my heart: mentorship, empowerment, and paying it forward. And we're in conversation with three of your very own shining stars. Sam, Sandi, Khanyo, so lovely to be with you today. It's a big topic and it's such an important one because when we think about mentorship, we have mixed ideas about it. And I'd really love to hear from you, Sam, as an opener. What do you think mentorship, authentic mentorship is, and how you practice that?
I think for me, authentic leadership means showing up to someone in your whole self and being able to show them that you are going to fail. You're not going to win every time you try something. And being able to encourage people and your life experiences to help them go through what they need to go through in their corporate careers as well.
I love that it's that combination of vulnerability and strength, that there are two sides to that leadership coin. When we think of mentorship, Sandi, often it's this cursory thing, it's done by accident. When you intentionally set out to be a leading light for your team, and maybe people that don't even work directly for you, but maybe who want to work in your team, what are some of the attributes of what that looks like?
So, I think this has been something that has played out in my own life in terms of my mentorship journey starting out. I have had mentors that were not in my direct line. It's, conversational sparks, it's through networks, and, that conversation organically grows and that relationship organically grows from that. So, I think that very important for me is to also provide that level of openness to allow people to maybe learn from me, draw from something from my own experiences. And I think that you touched on it in the topic. It's really about paying it forward and ensuring that the opportunities that you had through people that had no necessary sort of stake in, uplifting you provide that to somebody else.
Sometimes we see this as being something accidental. It happens along the way. Should we approach, especially as women leaders who have managed to make our way into spaces where women couldn't make their way in before, do you think we have to be more intentional about it, more organized? Does it have to be a formal process, or does it grow organically?
I think the fact that you mentioned intentionality, I think you have to bring a balance. It's about being yourself, but also understanding that the intentionality plays a role. As you grow through corporate, you start off, you're lacking confidence, it's a new environment, you're surrounded by successful people, you're surrounded by leaders, managers, and all sorts of things. But the ability to actually go into those situations and say, I'm going to be intentional about who I am, actually stems from relationships you get from mentors. I think mentors, you get fortunate in the corporate environment where you can actually get a mentor who can direct you and bring that intentionality for you. But you also have to equip yourself to understand that this is corporate, this is a competitive environment, this is a space that is not open to each and every one of us. And there's that element of you're fortunate to be in that space. So to get comfortable, to get to a point where you get comfortable, the mentoring part is so important. So that intentionality is so important, but it's a hybrid. Don't forget who you are, because that's the value you also bring in each and every space that you walk into, and it will create that for others as well.
I think what's so key and beautiful is that each of you express your leadership in different ways. And when young women or other people who look at you as role models can see that it happens in a Khanyo flavor, it happens in a Sandi flavor, it also happens in a Sam flavor, very different from each other, but consonant in creating strength, power, and credibility. At Nedbank CIB, that's very much part of the development and empowerment pipeline, Sam. So how do you begin that grooming, the spotting of talent, or even when somebody's maybe stepping out of line? and you want to be able to guide them and just help them with that guard railing a little bit. How do you manage what can be delicate?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very delicate situation about giving people the right opportunity to shine, but also making sure that in those situations, as you say, where you need to put them in a guardrail, you have put them in a guardrail. I think the most important thing for me is doing it in a way that doesn't call out in front of other people, that you do it in a one-on-one setting, that you take the time to actually understand where that person is coming from, perhaps ask them their point of view as to, can we just rewind, go through, why did you do this, understand their perspective, and then help guide them as to what a better way of doing it is going forward.
Sam, I want to pick up from that, and Sandi put it to you, the fact that we're living in a context business-wise and in the corporate environment where you have so many generations, I think for the first time, 4 generations, working together. And you might find with younger, particularly younger women who are ambitious, seeing mentorship or guidance as criticism. How do you manage what can be sensitive territory?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very interesting question, Iman, because this is something that I personally encounter quite a bit. So you talk about the multi-generations. I'm arguably somewhere in the middle there. There's people that are younger, there's people that are older. And I mean, the same way that I take guidance, I think that it's important to kind of lend that ear. Now, talking around how to ensure that it doesn't come off as criticism, I think the way that I approach it is, just trying to build that interpersonal relationship and leveraging off of those for the messaging. And so this is trying to, as cold as, corporate can sometimes be, the human element is so important, where you're engaging with someone not in an, authoritative way, but sort of, leaning to your answer, Sam, just ensuring that it is guidance and it's done in a respectful and, how do we understand each other better kind of format.
Sandi, as you're talking, I'm mindful of the fact that each of you represent very different environments in Nedbank CIB. Kanya, yours is highly specific as well. It's a hard hat environment that I believe you started in. You're moving into project development and then into energy finance. And you have this really firm engineering foundation. We're trying to create a welcoming environment to other women who might think STEM is a life I want to pursue. It's a career I want to pursue, even inside the banking world. How do you signal that availability to other women who might not have thought that this could be a place that they fit in?
The environment that I think came from, being a hard hat, safety boots, overalls, I was hard in that environment. But I think it's an environment that actually shaped me. I had to be the way that I was where I came from. But as I progressed and I moved into, I would call it softer environments, and I mean physically, not from a work perspective, drawing on those experiences where I felt I was shrinking myself. I wasn't myself in that hard environment that I personally was in. And where I draw on that experience now with I guess my peers, my colleagues, the younger ladies that I work with, to say I don't actually have to be any different than what I am as a person to still show up professionally. So just allowing myself to be a person, that is relatable, showing up as myself. I think that's the kind of thing that inspires other people to say, I don't think it's offensive to try and go into STEM. It's not a hard environment that I need to change myself, because I think I have drawn from experiences that, characterized me and then also just helped me to progress in my career.
Well, what was the moment where the light switch might have flipped for you in saying, this sort of engineering world, this hard environment, as we've described, is actually a place for me. This is where I fit in. This is my element.
To be honest, Iman, I've always loved maths. I've always loved physics. I've always loved. Yeah. I still love mathematics. Yeah. I see that love in my children as well. So I think it was a natural choice in a way to just move into the STEM subjects, and so I can't point it out as a moment where I would say actually it's just who I am. How I think I just bring myself into it by saying, you know what, people tend to think that maths and all these STEM subjects are intimidating. They're not. It just as with everything, with every career that you choose, it requires you must apply yourself. It is professionalism. I've been exposed to so many other professions just by being at the bank. And what surprises me is actually we're not a few engineers in the banking environment as well, but actually being able to interact with accountants, with CAs, actuarians and all the likes has shown me that actually we're all doing the same thing. We're just working hard. We're applying ourselves. We're tenacious in our work, and we're all doing the best that we can and showing up the best visions of ourselves.
I love all of that, Sandi, because it reminds me of another conversation I had with some of your CIB counterparts, where one was saying, I've always known I wanted to be a chartered accountant. But Sam, not everybody knows what they want to be, and they come into the corporate world sometimes because their family said, this is the route you should follow. When you're mentoring and seeking to empower and you see something else in one of your mentees or something else in a member of your team that you think they would be better suited to, how do you help them uncover a talent that they didn't think they had or they should lean into?
It's such an interesting thing. When I joined banking, I knew I wanted to be in banking. I didn't know that I wanted to be in the finance profession, but I got in via the finance profession, and it unfolded in a way that for me was very easy. And you don't always have that easy path in front of you. And I think often when you're dealing with people, with mentees, and they can't see it and they can't understand why they're struggling, is because it's not the right path. It's a little bit more difficult. And it's about helping guide them and see different opportunities and why those different opportunities might exist within the bank, and trying out something new and saying it's okay to go, try, fail, and you can always come back.
Sandi, I actually want to pick up on something that Sam has just said about knowing what you wanted to be. For many people, you know until you get to a place. And you've had quite an interesting journey, because I think at one point you described your career as an organic evolution. A graduate trainee, you go through credit management, leverage finance, and now you're a principal in syndication and distribution. How do you come to know, and who guides you to that place?
Iman, I think that's a very interesting question, because I think the short answer is I didn't always know what I wanted to do. I was guided by my family into studying in field in finances, so I did a BCom. Prior to that, I thought that I'd always wanted to be a lawyer. I liked the, powerful figures that it kind of represented, and I thought I'd love to, have that one day. And so I'm now in this finance sort of stream, and I'm looking at opportunities. Where to from here? There's obviously the people that come through to the varsities, they showcasing, and here comes banking. And my context is I come from a small town in the Eastern Cape. Our idea of banking is really just branches. It's retail banking. You go into a branch, that is your experience of a bank, and here comes something that is positioned in something that looks very fancy. So I think okay, I think this is something that I would like to pursue. And I was fortunate enough to get into the graduate program. I get in the graduate program, and I think that I was very fortunate, coming in to have a manager that sort of looked at me and the space that we were in, and he thought that instead of giving me a single sort of task to perform for him, he would rather give me a broader, scope of...
So you could try out different things.
Try out different things. Try out different things. And so it was a little bit of a helicopter view. You zoom around the bank, it's 1 year, there's only so much that you can see. But I mean, it completely changed my view of what banking is and the impact that I, started to aspire to have within the space. That has been the evolution, and I've really enjoyed kind of knitting all the various elements of it together.
We support your knitting and we applaud your knitting, because you've woven quite a beautiful tapestry in terms of the authority you've managed to stamp on your own leadership journey. But you've also said something that I really, Kanya, I want to bring to you. Often we may not have the label for the thing that we want to be, because we're not around people who show us, that's something I could be. Our dreams, or the things that make up our dreams, can be quite limited in terms of that palette of colors. How do we make sure that especially more young girls who don't have an aunt they can look up to, who don't have mentors, are able to find their way and understand that the opportunities might seem greater than they had initially thought. And I'd love if you could add a story or two in there.
So personally, and I think this speaks to the theme maybe of the paid forward that we opened with. I've done NPO work where I've gone into schools and been a tutor and being a mentor to younger women who are in high school specifically. Because like you say, Sandi was mentioning about we understand careers in banking to be at branch level. Our parents think we're tellers. I don't know about you guys, but mine still do. So when you go in front of young women and you show them what represents them, what are their options, I think that's one way. Obviously, we all have time issues and we have to manage our own resources accordingly. But I've found that that's actually been very meaningful for me. It gives me a great deal of it feels purposeful. So when you stand in front of women and you stand in front of younger women and you say to them, look, I've come from exactly where you come from. My story is very much a mirror of what you are experiencing, but here I am. I hope you can draw some inspiration from that. And I think even these sessions that we're having now, it's not automatic that I can come and sit in front of a camera and speak about myself. I'm naturally an introvert. But I've come to appreciate what is the importance of branding yourself and putting yourself out there, because representation matters. When young women see you and they're like, oh, she looks like me, she's got a story like me, surely this is something that potentially I could be as well, or even better.
Sandi, I can see you burning to get in there.
I think there's something that you touched on, Khanyo, that really resonated with me, and it's really around like looking at someone younger at the beginning of their career and sort of seeing yourself there. And for me, it's so exciting when I see that, because I think it's also an opportunity to, help my younger self, give them the grace that I sort of sometimes sought and at times got. How do you pay it sort of forward? But I mean, it's exactly that. It's the excitement of saying that you have a chance to be the person that others have been to you. And in some instances where others have not been able to, extending that extra hand to kind of, make it easier for the next person going through the journey.
I think that is so beautiful. I almost want to just rest in there, just for a moment. I also love what you said, Khanyo, about embracing the uncomfortable and the discomfort, Sam. We all like to be in spaces where we're comfortable. And the thing about comfort is that it keeps you sometimes stagnant and paralyzed, because you aren't muscularizing yourself. How do you mentor or even share an experience from your own life's journey about embracing the discomfort in order to reach that goal, that next step that you should be stepping into?
So I think very similar to Khanyo. I'm naturally an introvert. I don't want to be center stage. I find it very difficult to be around new people. I've had to learn to speak up when I'm sitting around a table, and very often in the environment that I'm sitting in, I'm the only woman sitting at that table. And I've had to learn to find that voice for myself. And I think when I'm mentoring specifically women in my space and my team, I have to show up and show them, listen, this is not my natural inclination. I don't want to have to put up my hand and say, sorry, these are my thoughts. Here's why I think you're wrong. I've had to also say, I'm doing it to show you this is the way you need to do it, and to not sit back and not let that conversation override you.
If I may, Sam, in fact, may I make all of you just a little bit uncomfortable? Because I think what is so useful is in the example of going through a moment, a situation, or how someone's responded, what's in your toolkit of how, even though you're feeling uncomfortable, but you know that something has to be done and said because you're leading and you're accountable. Can you, each of you, think of an example where either it was a decision-making moment or, a moment of leadership or stamping your authority on something where you had to push past discomfort?
I mean, I work in a financial role. I have to, at times, make a call which you're not necessarily, you want to be 100% sure. You want to go back, you want to test it 5 times. Sometimes you have to make a call that is a judgment call that says, I'm going to go with this decision that I've made. And you have to trust the work that you've done. You have to trust, the processes that you've built and rely on that. And it is an uncomfortable feeling. And I stepped in 18 months ago into a role where I was prepared, but I wasn't yet appointed. and I had to step in and start making judgment calls, which I felt incredibly uncomfortable about. But I had to lean into that feeling of discomfort and say, I've been empowered by the organization to caretake this role and to make these decisions. It really is. It's something that you wrestle with. And now I'm okay, 18 months down the line. But 18 months ago, I was sitting there paralyzed in this decision-making process and having to actually not let that show up and rather trust in the work that is being done around you.
And by expressing that, you validate everyone who's had the same experience as you. Sandi, I'd love to hear from you and Nolukhanyo as well.
I think Sam has put it perfectly. I mean, it's a constant. It's not a single moment. It's a lot of different moments in the day where you're constantly calling on yourself to say, look, there's a reason why you are in this position, and it's not to just kind of sit and safeguard the position. It's to speak up. It's to give your opinion. There's a trust that has been bestowed on you by virtue of you sort of being here, and it's not just it's not something that you're doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the greater good to actually start speaking up. And I think that I share what Nolukhanyo and Sam have said around being more reserved, and especially in the tables that I've found myself in investment banking and now in global markets, where you do have your bigger sort of personalities, very male dominated, even today, to kind of say that, look, despite the dynamics, despite who I'm seeing around the table, there's actually value in what I have to say, and I have an obligation to actually, speak out and,
Make it more real for me. You're in a boardroom, let's say, or maybe not even in a boardroom, but in a space where a decision has to be made. You're the lead, and you can sense that there's resistance. What do you do?
Oh, that's a tough one. And I think that the woo is actually my initial response. I'm sitting here and I think that, it's just drawing in yourself and realizing that you need to trust yourself. You need to trust yourself. And I think that that's what it ultimately comes down to is, oftentimes we want things to be absolutely perfect before there's movement, because if it's not perfect, then, how is it going to be received? And I don't know if everybody around the, proverbial table is thinking in the same way that I'm thinking, but you'll hear 1,000 comments, and then it ultimately comes down to what you've been thinking the whole time to say, I should have actually just backed myself. I should have backed myself and sort of made the call. So I think that with time you realize that there's no option but to actually trust yourself and move with that, because inactivity in itself is a failure. So there's no sort of downside to just trusting yourself and making the call.
I love that, and I wonder how many people listening to this and watching this would say, I also had that shucks moment. It was mine to take, and I squandered the opportunity. We often think of the concept of paying it forward in a very structured way. You created a policy change, or you sponsored and promoted a mentorship program that changed everything. As I'm listening to you, for me, paying it forward is in the example that each of you are in your own careers, because that's already showing someone a picture of what it could be like for them. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely agree with that. You walk into, I have to latch on to this experience that, where you have an interview, you go out and you speak openly about yourself, and people suddenly can relate to you. People are seeing, perhaps I have this serious face when I walk into the office, so suddenly you become, like I say, relatable. And that's powerful. That's powerful for people who don't feel comfortable in the workplace. That's powerful for young women who think, I have to be a hard, boisterous male, because that's the environment I've walked into. Because the reality is, it is still fundamentally male-dominated spaces that we find ourselves in. So it's absolutely 100% agree with you.
Well, this has been so delicious so far. And I want us, as we begin to close our chat today, to think about tangible ways in which you believe you've really left your mark in paying it forward for someone else. And banking is a unique animal, guys, so I'm sure that it takes on, again, a very unique form where you are. Sam, do you want to kick us off?
I try to do it in my everyday, and I don't want to sit there and say, keep a record of it. I think one of the things that I've been really passionate about is getting people to come in through the Yes Graduate program, which is the Youth Employment Scheme program. I had 3 young ladies start with me about 3 years ago, got them permanently employed into our workforce, and they've actually recently, 2 of them will be promoted into more senior roles within the
That is amazing. I almost want to do this thing that the kids do.
Yeah.
Just do it with me.
I know what you're talking about.
That's a little bit on
And
that.
for me, it's something that I'm really passionate about, because it's people who don't necessarily come from the same backgrounds. They haven't had the same opportunities. They come in, these young ladies came in, they've worked so incredibly hard over the last 3 years. They've picked up skills and experiences and actually built for themselves a solid career base in the last 3 years, and have a bright future in front of them. And it's just something that is the most remarkable thing to be a part of. And the people around me have all become so passionate about what it means to help create a career for someone.
It's beautiful. Sandi.
No, thanks for that answer, Sam. Very inspirational. So I think that, you touched on the fact that it's in the everyday, and I feel the same. I do think that I am at the beginning of my paying it forward journey. There's a lot that I still want to do. I've had, people actively reach out to me and say, look, can you be my mentor? This is what I'm looking for. And I think that's one form of mentorship that's important, the formalized one, where you actually have a clear sort of guidelines in terms of how do we see this relationship forming. And that's something that I'm extremely excited about. Again, it talks to, being that person that I would have wanted, or I did have when I started out on this journey. The other side of it has really been in the everyday. I was really fortunate to be part of the CA Top program recruitment process from my previous team, where we were taking final year articles, students, and generally they will stay in the business. And it was so beautiful to kind of look at the story from an interview stage. I think I've got a little bit of a soft heart, so once I understand your story, I become invested. I've invested so easily. And so it translates to far more than the technical. It's about assisting wherever it is you can, and it's in the hard stuff, it's in the soft stuff. It's people like maybe myself who have not had the same opportunities in terms of being able to understand how banking works, and being that guide for them, that soft guide to say, okay, cool, in this situation it's probably best to show up in this way, or it's probably best to kind of do A, B, and C. And so it doesn't seem like much in the everyday of it, but when you look back and when you sort of chat to those people and you understand the impact, it's just so fulfilling. And so that's why I'm saying I'm really at the beginning of that paying forward journey. It is something that really makes me excited to be able to do that for other people.
And we love it for you, and we love it for them. Kanya?
They had me both thinking around titles. We walk into the bank nowadays and we've got senior titles, which I found when I came into the bank a few years ago was almost a barrier to who I could talk to. And this was obviously an internalized thing. And this is just based off some feedback that I also just get from the floor from the business. Our younger colleagues will say, you don't act like your title.
Wow.
And I think that's something that maybe we could all take away, to say, you might be senior, but you can be more accessible. And I think maybe that's one way I can point to that's, I guess, is tangible.
I'm so inspired by that, because I would love for us to create an environment where every time a woman sees another woman, they already see an ally. They already see someone they know who, if they don't have the right answer, will be able to point them in the direction of having the right answer. And this idea also of not putting yourself in a box. So many of us say, okay, this is my box, this is the space I'm going to play in and no further. Because I'm not allowed, or that's not for me, or maybe I can't. Each of you has shown in this conversation today that it is everything that you want is within your purview. Nolukhanyo, Sandi, Sam, thank you so much for sharing so frankly and so honestly. And I know that everyone watching this episode is going to be hugely inspired to mentor, empower, and pay it forward. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of On the Couch with me, Iman Rappetti. We look forward to seeing you again soon.